Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another Historical Humans Reacts. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about a World War II museum that had a bunch of items stolen after a break-in. The Desert Rats Museum in High Ash, which is near Thetford, England, which we've discovered is in the Suffolk area of eastern England, and our British viewers are slapping their desks right now, but yeah, for us uninitiated Americans, it's on the eastern side of their country. You know, roughly the size of Florida.
Is Suffolk the side of Florida?
No, England as a whole,
Oh,
or
England is the size. I'm like,
no,
I'm
Suffolk is
like,
tiny.
how
That's
much?
like a tiny
Yeah,
town. But
yeah.
anyways,
I'm like, look.
burglars broke into the museum and they stole a large quantity of displays, and it happened overnight. And what they're talking about is that they broke in, they started smashing displays, they did an untidy search, and they were taking a bunch of items. And the smoking gun in this instance is a lot of the items are German, and German in World War II
Yeah,
were pretty
but
prominent. They
yeah,
had certain decorations that they used a lot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There, it was German, and one of the key things with what was taken is the specific uh items in that were stolen belong to two key things within Germany during World War II. The first is General Rommel, the Desert Fox. One of the objects was a piece of his personal property from the war, which is, of course, of high value due to the fact that it is associated with a famous historical figure. Um, and the rest of the items belonged to, how do we put this? The German equivalent of camp counselors.
Yeah, there were
Uh,
their secret service that had a lot of these items.
yeah,
And one of the big issues that is prompted with this museum theft, above it just being a museum theft, is that it seemed like the people knew exactly what they were looking for. It was looking for specifically German and far right leaning stuff. So it's pretty obvious that this was a targeted attack and that they were very specifically looking for some things. And one of the things that they really are asking for is um, any sort of clues, any sort of insight that people may have, any idea where this stuff could have gone. I mean, it's kind of hard for a lot of things to go missing like this and not show
yeah,
up somewhere.
yeah. I
But
think the Rommel's baton is what's going to get them caught because that is only valuable if you are able to sell it as belonging to Rommel. Uh, that's where most of its value is derided from. So that's going to be I think that's going to be what hangs them on this. And just one of the things that makes this theft extra sad, um, in a way, is that the museum itself is also a memorial to the soldiers who fell during the North African campaign, as well as some of those from the local area who participated in D-Day.
which a lot of them were
So
staged in this region prior to
yeah,
the attack because of the false
yeah, yeah,
staging.
yeah. And so there's the added tragedy of like you didn't just rob a museum, you didn't just steal artifacts belonging to a very horrible government, deceased government. You also, in doing so, vandalized a monument to the dead.
And I think this is kind of a threefold issue because obviously you do have the desecration and the
Yeah.
outright robbing of a museum. But then you have to
Mhm.
look at the two potential outcomes here. One, if this was specifically to be resold, to be fenced, you see a lot of potential issues. Like you mentioned with selling the baton. A lot of the other stuff would be easier to fence, but on the same token, knives and other things like that don't hold a super large amount of value intrinsically. It's usually their association to prominent figures that add that value. Again, it's going to be
Yeah.
difficult to sell that, but then that leads into the second potential outcome, which is the more unfortunate one, is that in the past couple of years here, we've seen a rise in certain ideologies that may have a favorable opinion towards the World War II era Germans. And if this is something tied to that, then this is really a tip of the iceberg into a really negative side of things. And gonna I'm gonna stand on a soapbox here for a half second and say something extremely controversial, Colum, is that if you supported World War II Germany, I don't think we would get along. I don't think they were good people. And if you're idolizing them or you try to make arguments to any degree that softens their impact historically, like, there's a problem. So the people that idolize the German World War II memorabilia tend to lean in that direction. Not everyone, but it's a problem, and it's becoming more apparent as time goes on. I mean, I know England is having a lot of issues right now with xenophobia and with other far right ideologies permeating the general public. I mean, I know we're seeing it here in the U.S., and it's just, it's scary because we've seen this historically before, and there isn't a necessarily well-defined end here in any direction.
And that is definitely a danger. Like with the museum stuff that has been stolen here, is in all likelihood, given what's been stolen and given the political climate, this was stolen to be a part of someone's personal collection of you know tiny little altar to evil. And one of the key things with all this, like, this museum, it's not doing anything to to warrant you taking it from here. Like, it's a volunteer run museum. If you want to see this for whatever reason, whether you're into the ideas behind the artifacts or just want to learn about World War II, you could just go here. You didn't have to do this.
I think the really sad, unfortunate truth to it all is we're starting to hit a point in history, in time, and it happens all the time, admittedly.
Yeah.
But we're hitting a point where the people who lived through those events are no longer with us. There's fewer and fewer. I mean, I think there's less than a few hundred World War II veterans. I mean, D-Day, there were like, what, 5, 6 of them that stormed the beaches? I mean, there's not a large amount of them, and you very much do lose a certain amount of empathy and a certain amount of compassion when you don't have that lived experience. Yeah. So I think the further we get away from it, the more history softens those blows. And Dwight D. Eisenhower, the commander of the armed forces in Europe during this time, made it a vivid point to document and to take photos and to really solidify the crimes and the atrocities that were taking place. And it's crazy to me that it even got to a point now in the modern day that we're even having conversations adjacent to it. But that's a soapbox all in itself. It's a tragedy anytime a museum gets robbed and artifacts go missing. We think it's important to highlight and to talk about because obviously institutions like this serve a great purpose, and to see any of them impacted by any sort of ideological forced crime is just a tragedy. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on, and for people to be idolizing a true evil is especially sickening. But I think that's a great point for us to wrap up. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next one.